We're going to take some time here to address application-specific vulnerabilities. And one of the things I want to mention here is that we've covered a lot of different vulnerabilities so far. And some of those affect applications, some of them affect systems and services. What I want to address at this point is applications that aren't common. And this can include both homegrown and enterprise applications because coding practices are very similar across the board. I'm talking about applications that are written inside a particular enterprise by their development department, or even in some cases large-scale enterprise software that is written but may not be very popular. And remember, just because they're not popular and vulnerabilities aren't published, vulnerabilities do exist in that software. And it's up to us to pull those vulnerabilities out. And this is kind of the point where you draw the line between being a novice in this field and being a professional and being an expert, is when you can go into an application you've never seen before and find and exploit a vulnerability. Usually these exploits and holes are present as a result of poor coding and poor testing practices for vulnerabilities. There really aren't a lot of good options for programmers to test their code for security unless they know how to do that. So there's not a lot of programs or methods in place out there to check for various vulnerabilities that exist in code. It's almost one of those things, you throw it out there, and if you find a vulnerability, you do the best you can to close it. But if we're the first ones to find that vulnerability, then that's an avenue into the network. Every application will have a unique method, sometimes methods that have never even been discovered yet. So this is an example, again, where a highly skilled penetration tester or hacker comes into play. Because up until this point, we can pretty much utilize existing tools and methodologies to get us where we need to be. And this is kind of where the line changes from vulnerability assessment to hacking. So once we've identified these vulnerabilities, whether we choose to exploit them or not, is where that kind of fuzzy line is drawn between assessing the vulnerabilities and using them to gain access to a system. Common examples of application vulnerabilities are very similar to something we might see in other software packages as well, such as buffer overflows, very weak authentication mechanisms, such as clear text communication of usernames and passwords. Probably the most frequent vulnerability I see in homegrown and non-popular enterprise applications is poor data validation. In other words, we can put anything we want to put into that field, even if it's to the detriment of the application or the back-end database hosting it. And also applications that are written with errors or poor error checking. In other words, we can make it crash because it doesn't know how to handle a particular error that we caused. So as you can see, even undiscovered application vulnerabilities can be an avenue into the network.